All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to
Hello.
stream number 10.
We made it to the double digits. It's an
We did.
official show now. Like it's not
We
just an
did.
experiment. We made it to the double digits.
We did. And that's freaking awesome. Sorry we're a little late today.
Hey, it
But
happens.
it happens.
I think
So
people understand.
yes, I hope so. And we appreciate you guys sticking around and waiting. So I know what a big thing that we forgot last week,
Oh
and I'm
yes.
gonna blame the holidays and holiday brain or whatever, was that we didn't do Jack's deals or our deals segment.
Yeah.
So I figured we'd start with one deal, right? And then we'll
Yeah.
end with another so that we catch up.
Okay. I had got a really good deal personally myself this past week. I think I'm going to save that for later.
Okay.
That's going to be the big one that people need to watch the whole episode for to hear about. But last week, Jack told me about a sale going on, the semi-annual sale at Bath and Body Works. I met
Okay,
her in
there you go.
person. I went to the mall with her. It is indeed true. So 50 to 75% off lotions, body washes, and creams.
Any.
I'm not sure if it's any. I think it's select.
Select.
But there was a
Okay.
lot in those bins. So
Okay.
I got 3 things for less than $10 because of that deal.
Wow, that's pretty good.
Yeah,
I mean,
it
and
was good.
that's good even for Bed Bath and Beyond or Bath and Body Works. Okay, so Bath and Body Works. All right,
Bath
so
and
they
Body
don't
Works.
usually
Yep.
do as many deals, right? It's always Bed Bath and Beyond that's sending
No,
everyone the
exactly. The one that gives
coupons.
you the 20% off coupon.
Or the
Exactly.
$10 or the $20 ones are really
No, exactly.
but okay, good. So if you need lotions, creams, that
Bath
type
and
of
Body
stuff,
Works.
Bath and Body Works. 50 to
Although I
70,
don't
you said?
remember if it's semi-annual sale or biannual sale. It's one of those two. I always get those two mixed up.
Oh
So
yeah, that's right. So I think it's probably semi-annual because that means twice a year, I
okay.
think.
Because I
Uh
think under certain contexts, like
yeah.
biannual can also mean like either every other year or it can mean twice in
It
one
can,
year. So
it's one of those terms that I think initially had one meaning, but
yeah.
everyone used it to mean the other thing, so now it means both.
Yeah, I think that's what it is. So I don't know
um
what the sale's called. 50 to
yeah.
75% off lotions, creams, and body washes. Select. I don't think it's
So you got
everything
to
in
go
the
into the
store,
store for it.
but
So
there's still
anyway,
a lot, and you got to see it in person. It's good stuff.
yeah. Well, and you also just want to make sure you're getting what you want, right? Because sometimes it's a very personal thing.
Yeah, it's very subjective. You need to smell the testers before you commit. I mean,
Also,
unless you're really brave.
yeah, well, also everyone has a different reaction to them, and sometimes you can get a really bad reaction. So
No,
anyway,
exactly.
all right, cool. So
Yeah.
that's the one. That's the deal number one, and then we'll have to remember to do your big deal at the end or
hmm
near the end. So I'm looking forward to that because I'm hoping it's something maybe I
You're
can.
probably gonna
Yeah.
want to take advantage of it.
Oh yeah. Oh
So
wow. Okay. Well then, I'm
don't
definitely looking
forget,
forward to it then.
because it'll be your loss if you forget.
Yeah,
And if
it
I
will. It'll be
forget, I
my
already got the
fault.
deal, so it doesn't even matter.
It'll be my fault. Yeah. Well, happy New Year to everybody. And it's kind of crazy. I say this probably every year, but it's kind of crazy that it's 2023.
Already.
We're living in the future. Of course we are, but I don't know, like the 2020s just seems kind of crazy. I mean, everything past 2000 was sort of crazy.
Yeah, because I see it this way, right? When I was growing up as a kid in the 90s,
Yeah,
I was like, okay, the 70s was 20 years ago, but it felt like fucking 50 years before. But
right.
if I look back 20 years from 2023, like I feel like that feels like 5 years ago.
Yeah, it's yes, much more of the feeling of, oh, well, wow, I can't believe that was 10, 15, 20 years ago, rather than, oh man, that seems like a long time. Yeah. It's much more like, oh, 20 years. That was 20 years. That seems like it was only 5 years ago.
No,
Much more of
exactly.
that for sure. And just like crazy things like being announced, right? Like, we won't talk about cars, but like I'm, the whole everyone knows I'm looking for a car and everything. And then there's the news that like, oh, California isn't going to allow new gas vehicles to be sold after 2035.
2035. Okay.
And you're like 2035 or 2030 or something like 2035. You're like 2035. That seems like forever. Like that's a long way away. And you're
That's
like,
gonna sneak
and
up
then you're
real
like, wait
quick
a
on
minute, it's
us.
2023.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like it's 12 years. That's not that far, right? I mean, that's not so like crazy. But like if when I was young growing up, and you were like, oh yeah, something's gonna be happening by 2035, you're like, yeah, that's never gonna come.
Yeah.
It's 2035. Like, are you insane? That's when all my science fiction shows and books and movies are set, right? They're set in the
Exactly.
20
Like the Fifth
somethings.
Element or like flying cars, stuff like that. That's 2035. But now at this point, it's about 10 years. So
Yeah,
crazy stuff.
crazy. And we will not have flying cars. And flying cars were always a sort of dumb idea. Why would we want random people just flying through the air?
Yeah,
They can't even not crash when they're on the ground, but we're gonna give them a plane.
exactly.
Not good.
We haven't even mastered, let alone implemented any trains in this country. So,
Yeah.
Who knows what kind of directions things could go in?
Yeah.
With so many possibilities on how to improve stuff.
And one thing they also can't track, Kyle, and this is sort of getting to
Oh
the
yes.
topic that we wanted to talk about today, because I found this. It was just in one of my news feeds, right, like a Google news feed. This article, and I discovered, it was like behind a paywall, but it's from a series that USA Today, um, which is sort of like it's like a big newspaper, but I think people sort of forget it because it's like the one that you get in like, cheap hotels and motels.
Absolutely.
Right.
It's usually written at like a third grade reading level. It's considered like the basic kindergarten chicken nugget sort of news outlet.
But what I've discovered, because I was like, oh, I want to read this article, and we'll talk about this article, but I want to read this article. So I'm like, you know what? I'm going to do this like month trial, and I'll share it with my friend Kyle so we can read these articles in this whole investigative journalism series called Broken Adoptions. And they started doing this, I think, in the middle of 2022, or maybe.
Yeah, it looked like it.
It's all about how the foster care system, the adoption system in America is broken, right? And they examine it through the lens and the story of the people, right? The foster kids, the adoptees that had their adoptions broken, and that the system has directly failed, right? And what is crazy is that our system's so broken that we can't even track kids through the system.
Yep.
And so I bring up like the things that you're like, wow, how is this stuff broken? It's like, well, it is. It's just crazy that we have these huge bureaucracies, both at the federal level and at the state level. And we have 50 different bureaucracies, right? Every state has their own system. But this system isn't just something that gets like, your crayons from point A to point B or something like that, right? This is a system that's designed to help children, supposedly.
That's what they say.
But they can't even track them, right? And they can't. And by Broken Adoptions, this whole series, they're focusing on the adoptions that go out of foster care, because that's actually, as broken as that system is in tracking, it's the only one that's really available. Because they go through a little bit of the history, but adoptions in America, domestic adoptions in America, for the most part now, have transitioned into coming out of foster care, because infant relinquishments has fallen. I think it's like 1% or something like that of all babies born in America. Only like it was only some crazy number, like only like 18,000 in 2020 were were relinquished for adoption of
It was
all the
really low.
of like 4 million babies or something like that born in America. So it's very, very low. That it's a vanishingly small number. And that didn't used to be the case. It used to be in the 40, 50, 60, 70, 80,000, right, a year. So it's very, very low now. So most of it comes out of the foster care system. So that's the best source of data.
Mhm.
But it's also, but then when you dig down into it, and USA Today has done really in-depth analysis, and they link to their GitHub, the repository. So their methodology and their sourcing of data and how they analyzed it and everything is very transparent, which kudos to them for doing that, because that isn't always the case, right?
And I'm taking a look too.
Yeah,
I'm looking at the code. I'm looking at the comments in the code. It's pretty thorough and it's very readable as someone that wasn't involved with this research itself.
yeah.
So shout out to them.
So
They
like anything
they did a
that's
good
written in these
job.
articles, people have the ability to like go to the same data set and do their own independent analysis on it, right? And call out any mistakes or flaws in the methodology. But the the foster care system is the best place to get the data, right? So this series is really talking about, I think, that segment of adoption, domestic adoption. They do have some articles about international adoption. They talk about it a bit, and the main one we're going to discuss is about an international adoption. Um, but it's kind of crazy that a system that we know is very broken, right? And has horrible data management. Like
Mhm.
their data governance is just, it's so bad, but it's better than anything else, right? Because of, if you don't go through the foster care system and have that first interaction with the state, right?
Mhm.
Literally the state, or the little s or the big S, federal government, then it's like the chance of you having any sort of record keeping and being able to track that is like, there's no chance of that. So
Yeah.
right, so they had to be like, all right, well, the foster care system has some record keeping, but what was so the broken adoptions are the ones where a child is in foster care, and then they get adopted out of foster care, and then they're back in the foster care system. So the adoption fails, right? There's a dissolution of the dissolution of the adoption, right?
Mhm.
And what's crazy is that in only 16 states is the infrastructure in place for that level of tracking to happen. So
To
of
be
all
able to
the
say a child that was in foster care was adopted,
Yep.
something happened to dissolve the adoption, and now they're back in that system, correct?
Yes, exactly. And be able to know that that was the same child, right?
Okay, yeah.
Because what happens, right, with the whole when you have a culture for decades of closed adoptions and trying to, secrecy and hiding sort of people's origins, right? When a child entered the foster care system, they had an ID number, and then that ID number will change when they become adopted.
Mhm.
And if it doesn't change, then if they go back into the foster care system,
Let's
that's
give
when
them a
it
new
will
one.
change, right?
Yeah.
So there isn't a universal you know unchangeable ID number that's attached to a child that's in the system, so that that at any point, whenever their status changes, it's the same person that it happened to.
And when you talk about this stuff, you talk about the lack of centralization, the lack of standardization, the lack of these systems in place, and it sounds like 36 states or 34 states in comparison to the 16 that do. And I'm thinking about, we have all of the technology and all of
Oh
the
yeah.
the know-how to be able to do this because we have credit scores, and that can keep track of any little bill that's gone delinquent for any little thing that's happened
Mm-hmm.
in life.
Mm-hmm.
And using that model as a basis for comparison to moving children around out of their biological families into and out of the foster care system. It's mind-boggling to hear how, on one hand, we have a system that keeps track of everyone, and regardless of what happens throughout the course of their life, name changes, moving, things like that, it's still tied to a central record that is lifelong, related to monetary transactions and loans.
Right.
But at the same time, we can't even do that at the federal level with children being placed in homes through the adoption process, which is
Right.
it's wild to think about if you put those two things side by side.
Totally. I mean, it's not a problem of technology, right? I mean, what I did learn when reading some of the articles in this series is that there is a federal database set up for this. You know, they spent the time and the resources and the money to put this together, but it's a lack of will um, to actually adhere to those standards and to do the reporting, right? Because the federal government relies on each state agency to voluntarily fill out these records, right, and to keep them in a good state.
Mhm.
And initially, they thought, well, we'll make a law, and there are laws in the books that say that if you fail like periodic data health checks, right, to put a term on it, then you can be fined. And they tried to find the states that they found to be delinquent or to have just really poor data, but the states would fight it.
Yeah.
And then the federal agencies sort of just gave up, and they're like, all right, well, we just kidding, you don't have to
Just
pay the
do better
fine.
next time, okay?
Yeah, literally, like, they're just like, just try to do your best.
Sounds like the Pentagon military budget audits.
Yeah. And yeah, and that's it, and it's never gotten any better, or in a lot of these states it hasn't gotten any better at all. And and so and the way they designed this system, if I can I'll try to find the actual name of it. They try to do it as simple as possible, right? Like just the bare bones data points, and very simple forms, not a complex process at all, but and these are and the United States has spent billions of dollars over like from 2008 to 2020, which is like this period of time that of the data that this series has looked at. And they spend hundreds of millions a year, billions over decades. Jeff, you have a background noise. What is that?
Is that me?
I think so.
Uh-oh. Let's see here.
Yeah,
Screen mix.
That's better. It went away.
I didn't do anything.
Weird. Sorry, guys.
No, it's all good.
No, yeah. So we'll get the name of the database, but the infrastructure is there. There's just no will, right? I just don't think people want to do it. And I mentioned the secrecy of the closed adoptions and everything because I think it's also there's a considered effort. It's not just because of laziness either. I think it's a philosophy of secrecy, or like this idea that adoption makes you a completely new person, and the system is actually going out and trying to do that by both giving you a new name, changing your birth certificate, and also sort of giving you an ID number, a new ID number, right, and making it impossible to trace you back to your original identity, right? And so the system is set up to sort of support that culture of secrecy. And if the data is literally just deleted because there were some states that it was just common practice that they would literally delete the information before sending it to the government, so that you didn't know who the parents were, the parents' IDs numbers, social security number, or other identification numbers were.
Mhm.
So you might need to put down your. Yeah, sorry about that. You have like feedback or something.
Damn, I'm gonna check.
Is your phone near it?
No.
Yeah, maybe your gain needs to go down. Yeah,
Turning my gain down.
I don't think it's the phone, because our phone's not. I don't think the phones are near it.
Yeah. Turn my gain down. Looking at my monitor. It says I'm good. My apologies.
Not a problem.
If I How's this?
Better. Sounds good.
All right. I hope that is going to be good.
You're good, man.
Perfect. Nice. Thank you, Anonymous.
Thank you. Yeah. So we did want to talk about a specific story, which was the one that sort of caught my eye and made me want to sign up for USA Today so I could read it. Is about now a young man who was adopted from Uganda named Charles. They don't give his Ugandan name, I don't think.
Yeah, they don't.
But did you want to share that? If you can get it up.
Yeah, let me go ahead and get this link. Oh man, I gotta log in. This is killing me. All right.
They're always like that, man.
I was using a different computer earlier to read these articles. Okay. And let's add that to my LastPass. All right. And if I present, let's
And this is not a new issue, by the way. Like, the government's known more about this for a long time. And I don't know why they can't just hold funding back, to be like, look, you need to demonstrate that you're actually making progress, to keep getting funding, but we'll just stop funding you. I don't think there are other things they could do, but they don't want to do it.
Yeah.
Because I think they're afraid of being told, well, if you take this money away, or even fine these agencies, then you're taking resources away that kids need, and so they're afraid of being hurting the kids like that, and I can understand that.
Yeah, I guess in a
And by
sense they're
not
treating it like stopping the economy with COVID, for example.
right.
If you were to find someone that is a bad actor, it would also hold up the rest of the process. So there's some hesitance to do that.
Right, there's like a chilling effect on,
agencies
like,
accountable. Yeah.
it's like they're being held hostage, right? And it's like, well, at the same time, if you're not able to track these children, and to give them services when they need it, and to support the adoptive families and the foster families, then you're doing harm as well. So I don't see how just continuing in the status quo is really going to be tenable. But anyway, all right. So can you zoom in just a little bit?
Yeah, let me. Oh, man, I'm in the wrong window. Okay.
There we
And
go.
I might stretch that a little bit here.
There we go. Yeah.
All right, cool.
Quat Quat Kwiatkowski.
Yeah, Kwiatkowski. I
um,
knew a few people with that last name when I was growing up in school. So
oh yeah,
a lot of
Polish.
Polish
You think
people around. Yeah,
Polish? Yeah.
yeah.
Um, she's written a lot of these. They've been really good, to be honest.
Okay, I hadn't seen the name before, so it's a familiar name.
Yeah, no, she's written a bunch. She's part of this whole like series, so she's written
Okay.
a bunch of them. So this article is about. I guess that he was 17, or when they started the story, but I think he's like 18 or 19 now.
Yeah, he's around 18, give or take, after high school, supposedly pursuing education beyond that.
Right. Um, so it's about how Jennifer Girth, the adoptive mom, and her husband Charles, um, adopted Charles. Oh no, so her husband's not Charles, but they just say her husband. They never name him actually because I think he dies
Yeah, he dies real like
like
2 years after the
2 years
adoption.
after. Yeah, in like 2017. Um, and throughout this whole process, so like from day one of Charles being adopted and coming to America, it was a very tough situation, right? They talk about how, he's like, I'm being stolen, like I don't belong here. And then he starts to act out. And he's very manipulative. He tries to get more food. And he tries to, and he's a bigger kid, uh, being
Yeah,
brought
because
into this family. They already
I
had
guess
two
that's what he
kids.
looked like when he came, and then like 2 years later, he like looked like he was 15,
Yeah.
and
So,
then they
yep.
found out, oh shoot, well I guess he's actually older than we listed him
And it was
as
like a
in the
lot older
adoption.
too. It was,
Yeah,
they said he was 7, but then the doctor, one of the doctors was like, he's not 7, based on like X-rays and stuff.
yeah. So a couple years later, they found out that he was 14 by that time, and
Yeah,
not 10 as they expected.
right. So he was 3 years old. So he was already 10 when they first adopted him. And then so the school is just like, oh, you're 14, you're gonna go into that grade now. Like I mean,
Yeah,
isn't that kind of crazy
yeah.
that they weren't like, oh, maybe he's already sort of behind, but just because based on his age, we're just gonna bump him right into the grade he's quote unquote supposed to be in based on his age.
And he didn't
Uh,
even know English in 2015,
yeah,
and then having to move his grades and schooling to something that's supposed to be more age appropriate with that language and cultural barrier, it's
yeah,
got to be rough.
that's rough. Um, so and seven's already pretty old to be adopted.
Yeah.
So
Actually, how old were you when you were adopted?
I was 3.5, 4.
Okay. Even then, yeah,
Yeah,
I
it's
would
pretty,
say
which is pretty old.
that's pretty late because I was 2 months. I was still wet. I was fresh, and by 2 months old, I was already in the States. So
Yeah. So I mean, what also really strikes me about this story is that when I was growing up, there there was a similar situation like this in my town, and the boy was Korean, and
mhm.
he was my age, and he entered my school, and he had been to like a bunch of different schools, and we were cool, but he was he acted out a lot, and
Okay.
it and hit and this one and his adoptive parents did a lot of what they could too as well to like get him back to Korea. And I think the last I heard he was living in Korea, but it was tough, right? Like it's not like it's a fairy tale like that he sort of like found his family and then everything was okay. Um, but so this story really made me think about that,
Yeah.
that situation that um, and growing, and I was in like high school, um, so I was not, I was concentrating on other things, but I still remember because we knew each other. We weren't like good friends, but we knew it was happening. My parents talked about it a little bit. It was in the news and stuff, but it wasn't really a huge story. It wasn't like a national story, but back then, like things didn't really. It was harder for things to go like national, right? I
Yeah.
think. But yeah, so this just really made me think about that.
Yeah, so I guess one thing that immediately struck me about this piece when I started reading it, so this is not my home. One family's quest to overcome a hurtful international adoption. They acknowledge right away, oh shoot, maybe this is fraudulent,
Yeah.
and the biological mother didn't actually turn him over for adoption. And I guess the most striking thing to me was that immediately from the very beginning, these adoptive parents, to their credit, I'm not going to say they're
Yeah.
heroes or anything like that, but I will at least say they did the right thing by immediately recognizing there was something wrong about the arrangement of that adoption. And it looks like Jennifer Girth put in earnest effort to try and reunite Charles with his biological
A lot.
family
A
that was
lot.
still there.
A lot. I mean, if this story is accurate, which I don't have any reason to think it's not, other
Mm-hmm.
than my just general level of suspicion. But
Sure.
yeah, she did a lot. I mean, it wasn't just sort of, yeah, she did a lot.
And I guess when I think about the average stereotypical adoptive parent, that you're pretty nice and understanding, so maybe you haven't made fun of them or been mean about them as much. But I guess when I picture the typical adoptive parent that I am mean spirited about, it's someone that has a savior complex, someone
Hmm.
that has a colonizer sort of attitude, someone with a sense of entitlement to other people's children. So I was really struck by how it seemed Jennifer in this case was an outlier and not just recognizing that there was something wrong with the adoption because of the behavioral problems and the inability to bond as family members, but the fact that she acknowledged, hey, maybe he would be better off with his biological family in his cultural homeland instead. And I think that is so rare that it's worth recognizing that out of all
Yes.
the pieces written about adoption or international adoption, or even in the rare cases where disrupted or broken adoptions are talked about, it's very rare to acknowledge, hey, it's probably better if this kid is with his biological parents and in his homeland. And
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
something that everyone in this story tried to follow through on. So
Yeah.
that is worth
Especially
noting.
especially when it's with, you know, between, when one corner is America, middle class lifestyle, and the other corner is, Uganda living in like poverty and cramped spaces and, you know, that that type of situation, right? So it's like
Yep.
it's very it's yeah, it's not it's not common uh for, an American woman who had the wherewithal and the desire and to be able to be like, well, maybe it's better if he goes back to something like that, right? Um, so yeah, she deserves some credit there for sure. Um, so I agree with you. But so could you just scroll? Yeah, let's just continue to read it.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
So this kind of goes into the background of the adoption itself.
Yep.
They were inspired by events going on in Haiti. Then they were
Yeah.
like, well, the husband was too old to adopt based on Haiti's rules and regulations. So they decided to look into another place and they ended up with Uganda.
Right. And this is where it's like, well, didn't it say that she had like she was inspired by Haiti? So this goes. So again, right? She's not a saint. She's not a savior. She has some. You
Yep.
know.
Researched large number
Yeah.
countries with large numbers of waiting children. There were allegations of corruption in Ethiopia, but Uganda seemed okay.
Or so they believed.
Yeah. Yep. And so they
I
went to
mean,
an
they lived in
agency.
Florida, and none of the
Yep.
Florida agencies would do the Uganda adoption. So they're like, "Yeah, let's just go to Texas." Texas.
Yeah, illustrating how this varies, this process and the regulations and the relationships vary a lot, even between states within this single country.
Yeah, and also just like they really went out of their way to get this adoption done.
Yeah,
Um, I I find that sort of weird. I'll say it. To me, that's a weird thing. Um, if you wanted to help people, there are plenty of people to help here.
yeah,
Uh, so yeah, like even if they wanted to adopt an older child, they could do it here. There are plenty
yep.
of them. They're not plenty of them, but there
There are
are.
enough where they wouldn't
Yeah,
have to look overseas at least.
right. There. Yes, exactly. Um, so anyway, they went to pretty big lengths to do this. So then they went to Uganda. So that is one good development, right? In that in the international adoption space, that uh, visiting the country and picking the child up from the country of origin is, I think, almost universally what happens these days. Like, you just can't stay at home and then get a child that, meet them at the airport. Like what happened with me. Like, my parents didn't go to Korea.
Yeah, mine didn't either.
So
And they didn't have Wikipedia at the time to read basic facts about Korea. They were like, hey, let's go. This child needs our help. We don't know anything about this country they're from. Let's go.
yeah. So, he seems pretty happy here, but probably doesn't know that it's like permanent, right? Like, he's like, I'm going on vacation.
Yeah, that's how he treated it, based on what the article said. He just liked playing with Legos and having fun with his siblings that he thought he was on vacation with. But turns out, yeah, he was going to be there for longer than he expected.
Yeah. So, all right, let's continue scrolling here. Uh, right. So that's what it said. So if you just do one tick up, a couple ticks up. Yeah. At first, Charles treated life in the U.S. like a vacation or adventure. He gravitated toward his bubbly new sister and showed interest in Legos, trains, and whatever else his new brother was into. He loved drawing and riding his bike. Charles was also obsessed with food. On his first day of school, he disappeared after getting off the bus, only to be found in the cafeteria wheedling some extra food out of the staff. School was challenging for him. He had difficulty sitting still and following directions. So, I mean, that's something, the food thing, I've heard is not uncommon with uh, the with international adoptees that I've talked to. Um,
Especially with someone that was adopted uh, relatively old and coming from a place that was not as economically well off.
right, and his family, right, was not like, so that type of like, I don't. I guess it's a combination of like hoarding and it's like a what's it, just like the food fixation to like try to get as much as you can. Um, I
Yeah,
wouldn't
because
be
you don't know
surprised.
where the next source is going to come from.
Yeah, or like, and I wouldn't be surprised if like he would try to get more than he knew he could eat at the moment, just to like save it, right, and like hide it, stuff like that.
Mhm.
Um, they don't say that he did, but I wouldn't be surprised. Um, yeah, so then they're saying that Richard is the husband. So Richard Girth died of a heart attack, and that trauma looks to have triggered that event seems to have triggered Charles's past trauma. And then the pediatrician noticed that his bones seemed to be more developed than it should be for a 10-year-old. So
Yeah,
he was a teenager, 14, not 10.
damn.
Yeah.
Yeah, moved him from third into seventh grade. That's a pretty big jump.
The transition was rough. No shit.
Yeah.
He was used to being with younger children and continued to struggle with language and comprehension.
And I guess it's impressive that Jennifer realized Charles's struggles and was like, hey, maybe we should try putting him in a boarding school in Uganda. But I guess that ended up falling through.
Well, and the State Department was like, we will report you to child welfare services, which will then mean that not only would you lose Charles, but you'd lose the other two kids too. So she was like, all right, Charles, we're going back to Uganda, to America.
Yeah.
So the government was was fighting her on this, which I, I don't necessarily think that they were in the wrong there. I mean, at the time, she was responsible for him, so she just let him or let him stay in Uganda. Like that would not be responsible either. So, but yeah, I mean, uh, she's still searching, right? I mean, but long story short, uh, Charles ends up going back to Uganda, and the government lets her do it. The U.S. government and the Ugandan government, and he's supposedly living in Uganda somewhere. Um, he's
Yep.
not.
Somewhere.
It doesn't look like he's staying with his mom. Um,
So if we scroll all the way down,
yeah,
that's where the conclusion is, where they're like, well, we can't really verify his current whereabouts.
yeah. So, what I mean, what were your broader thoughts about this? Because there's so many elements to this, and I don't want to go through every little detail,
Yeah.
but of this specific story. But like overall, I mean, this is sort of an insane situation.
Yeah, it's crazy to think about from the perspective of a fraudulent adoption. I mean, that might not necessarily be an incredible rarity, but it's a rough situation. Not a lot of people can relate to that. And on top of the fact that there is a back and forth with the home culture and home country to try and establish a relationship there, in part because the original adoption was fraudulent. It looks like he was relinquished by his father, his biological father, but
Right.
he didn't actually have the authority to do that. And the biological mother was like, "Hey, I'd like to see him," but I don't know. There was several things that really I captured them in a document to kind of discuss them. I'm kind of just going through right now and
Yeah.
looking at the things that were interesting to me. Um, so I, first of all, I'm looking at uh, of the adoptions that of all of the children that end up in foster care, 60% of them were because of a child's disability or behavioral problem. Uh,
Right. Right.
Parents' abandonment, relinquishment of the child, or the family's inability to cope. So it sounds like there was some sort of issue either in the home or with the child that was the reason given for their relinquishment. And I think it shows that a lot of people that have children in similar situations or with similar conditions are able to economically support them in ways that other children that don't have those same issues don't need, and there are economic reasons for why this ends up happening. And I
Yeah.
guess it strikes me every time that when we're talking about children that are in the foster care system or there are difficult circumstances that make them end up there, if I zoom out far enough, it seems like a lot of it has to do with economic factors, or at least could be mitigated by economic factors, like them having more money. So I guess there's a lot of discussion in the piece about possible ways to address the problems that we've talked about in terms of inconsistent record keeping,
Mm-hmm.
in
Mm-hmm.
terms of lack of centralization of the data, keeping track of these kids, uh, vetting foster parents and adoptive parents to make sure they're not abusive. I mean, I think you can address each of those symptoms of there being a larger problem, but at the end of the day, it seems like a lot of kids end up in this situation in the first place because the biological or natural family is not supported in various ways
Yeah.
that relate to just not having enough money to take care of the kid.
Yeah.
And this is just another example of, if we address problems outside of anything having to do with people having kids or adoption, that we can address these issues that show up in the adoption system by doing things economically that would prevent them from being in that situation in the first place.
Yeah. And a lot of like the a lot of the resources that the state government gets from the federal government for child welfare, and also probably just the state funds themselves, are given are only given to support like foster families, not like birth families. So there's a lot of just like incentive to adopt out of foster, not like adopt outside of that system, or to support people so they don't need to relinquish their children. So it's just like, what, we have all this money, we can't have like a good data system, and we can't support families so that they don't even need to be in the system. So it's like, what's going on? Where's all the money going? That's why I always like wonder. It's like, where's the money going? Like, who's profiting off of the system being the way it is?
Yeah, that is a good question, because I remembered seeing in either this piece or another piece in this series that some parents ended up putting their kids in foster care, knowing that they would have access to more resources if the child was taken care of through the foster system than if they were to stay in their current situation.
Yeah, it that seems insane.
It's sort of like when married people that make just enough money and one of the spouses ends up getting cancer or some sort of expensive medical condition and can't qualify for Medicaid, that they get a divorce. So that way it
Right. They're
only
not a married
counts
couple,
that
right? They're
sick
single.
spouse's income
Yeah.
so that they can qualify for that aid. So I think that's just another example of having to use these sorts of workarounds to be able to get the assistance that's needed from the very beginning.
Yeah. And we've talked about situations in certain countries that and these are not just me or Kyle speculating that, oh, this might happen, but there are uh people have been prosecuted for these types of frauds, where in some countries, uh kids will be given into the care of an organization by their parents, thinking, oh, they're going to go there and get like education. It's sort of like a boarding school type situation. And then, we can visit them, and they'll come back, to live with us after, they get educated or whatever, or, when we want to come get them. Um, but there's no other system in place to have those services, to get the kids educated or have medical care.
Mm-hmm.
So we talk about that stuff happening in, poor, quote unquote, third world countries, but some of that stuff happens here too. So,
Absolutely.
so like, it's just mind blowing. Um, it's not even like I'm that surprised by it. It's just sort of like we allow that stuff to happen. And when you think about just how much money there is being, flowing to each of these states for this purpose, to the child protective agencies or parts of those state governments. Um, but nothing ever seems to get better, right? Like they don't improve their data um, capture. They don't increase services. because that's also the big thing, is that there's such a lack of follow-up service by these private agencies, and also by the state agencies once the adoptions happen.
Hmm.
Um, like no one follow. Like sometimes it happens for foster care, adoptions out of foster care,
Yep.
but in a private situation, there's none of that, right?
Yep.
So it's like
And I guess in any international situation, international adoption situation, as a
that either,
result.
right? Yeah,
Yeah.
there's no the agencies don't follow up, or they might be doing better now, but for a long time there was no follow. There was no follow up. I mean, so little to the point of that it didn't exist, right?
I mean, I guess from the perspective of our typical capitalist economic model, what incentive do they have to follow up once they've already gotten paid for the placement?
Right, and also since they'll never get in trouble for it.
Yeah. If there's no accountability or penalty or fines or removal of accreditation, I mean, I guess there were some punishments talked about where fraudulent adoptions were being done in like China or in Ethiopia in this article, and the agencies in the states that made those adoptions possible ended up getting their accreditation
They do.
revoked.
Sometimes they
But
do.
yeah,
Sometimes.
sometimes if you're lucky, they do. But it sounds like in pretty much all of those cases, they ended up getting their accreditation back within a couple of years. So
Yeah.
it doesn't seem like there's any sort of permanent consequences for these bad actions or inadequate policies to make sure that these adoptions are not fraudulent.
No, they're not. Um, and in one of we'll link to the series. For real this time. I'll update the description. Um, or I can put it in the in the chat.
We could do that too. I mean, it's definitely worth reading because the whole series is pretty long and pretty dense.
Yeah.
But I mean, unlike a lot of articles that I've read in USA Today throughout the course of my lifetime, this is actually very thoroughly researched. I was very surprised.
Very thoroughly. Um, one of the stats that jumped out at me was that on average, 12 adoptions failed every day
Yeah, that's crazy.
between 2008 and 2020.
Yeah, and that adds up
And I
to
think it
the
was, yeah,
66,000 in total over that period of time.
right. And that is an undercount, right?
Yeah, that's a conservative estimate based on the data that is available, whatever limited data is out there.
Um, each year we funnel billions of dollars into this system, right? Into adoption assistance for families, and incentives. And this is the thing, right? Incentives for public agencies to boost their adoption numbers. See, I find that to be a very weird incentive. It's like, we're going to give you money to boost the adoption numbers. Well, what do you think is going to happen? Is they're going to do whatever they can to boost those numbers, no matter how
Meeting their
shady it
quota.
might be.
Yep.
Like that, I feel like that has been the go-to move to say, no, we're serious about helping kids. We're going to get them adopted. Like,
Yep.
um,
I mean, and I guess on a surface level that makes sense. The idea that if you're doing it faster and there's time limits, you're treating it with urgency because you think it's important. But that's always the stated ideal intention. I guess when it comes down to the worker bees and the social workers and any of the representatives involved with the process itself, either involved with the state or involved with the agencies, in order to meet those deadlines and with all these prerequisite steps to make sure that things are done legally, things end up getting missed. Things get rushed. Things get sloppy. Things get inconsistent,
right.
and children suffer as a result.
Yeah, and so, like, billions of dollars are being spent. They always seem to be short-staffed. They always seem to have the worst technical, technology. They
Yep.
never seem to have enough resources to give support for families. I'm like, how does that happen? Like, how it doesn't make any sense to me. And but from what I think seems to happen, I think, and I think this is a pattern that's happened in all sort of areas of government, is that a lot of those dollars, they're not spent on government infrastructure, right? Hiring people and things like that. Buying computers, um, not only staffing up in terms of like social workers and other people who can give direct assistance, but having good technology staff on hand to be able to build out these systems. They contracted out to private organizations to do this stuff,
Yep.
and there's no government agency that's providing these follow-on services for adoptive families, right? Doing the coaching, or the you know having just like psychologists, or like uh child development, parenting coaches, or whatever, staff on hand, so that they can actually physically do checks, right? They can go and
Hmm.
be like, we're gonna come and help if you need. They don't spend the money on that, right? They don't have like government employees for that. They contract it to a private organization that's going to charge more, have dubious quality of service. And
Exactly.
so I answered my own question about where does the money go. It goes to crooks. That's who it goes
Yeah.
to.
Because, I guess when I think anyone that's worked for a large company that acquires something new, or decides to move to a new area of business, or decides to uh, make a new customer offering, I mean, contracting things out to third parties is how you're able to make that pivot and achieve it quickly, but at what expense? And at
Right.
first, it's going to be, if you are contracting it out, it's going to be more expensive doing that, but getting more immediate results than if you were to build that up yourself and were to, say, hire a new team, do the research to make sure that things are growing correctly. And that's never usually the case, because companies or large organizations or bureaucracies want results immediately. And yeah, I mean, the quality is going to be worse. It's going to be more expensive, and the quality of care, or the quality of how the children are being treated as a result in that process, is going to suffer. So you may be able to tick off the box saying that you are expanding operations, or you're
Right.
doing something new,
Right.
but
Yeah,
through
it's
a
like
more
yeah.
expensive and lower quality way of actually achieving that, rather than doing the hard work of doing the planning and proactive sorts of actions to make sure that this thing grows organically, and that things are done thoroughly and properly, because there are human lives involved in the process.
Right. That's the thing, right? It's human lives at stake here. Um, yeah. So that's what I don't understand. It I would hope we would do better, but we're not.
So, and,
So
and so here's one other thing that struck me, is that, you know, I don't like giving adoptive parents credit if I don't have to, but I
yeah,
will give credit to Jennifer here for making sure that Charles ended up in a place where he was happy, because he was not happy in the United States, and he didn't see Jennifer as an actual member of his family. Um, and when Jennifer was trying to uh, follow through with getting Charles back to Uganda in a way that he would be satisfied with, she contacted the State Department, she contacted the FBI,
yeah,
as
everybody.
yeah, as it
Seems
related
like
to adoption fraud or fraudulent practices in adoption in Uganda. And she basically got the response of, well, he's in a better situation now, and we can't really do anything about it, if they even answered her calls or messages at all. So the fact that the system itself is broken, and any mechanisms that people could directly reach out to try and rectify the situation are either too busy and tied up, or simply don't care, or don't have the resources.
or all the
Uh,
above.
yeah, it's like, if there is no recourse for bad situations, uh, why do we have the system at all? Knowing that inevitably things are going to go wrong at
That's
some
right.
point, but
That's
having
right.
no mechanisms to address any of those problems. Then it's as if, why are we doing the practice at all, knowing that we can't address anything that comes up that's not going according to plan?
Yeah. Um,
So that's something that I was surprised by. The fact, well, maybe half surprised by, in the sense that she was trying to do things right. She was reporting unethical agencies and wasn't even getting sort of a formal sort of response of, hey, we'll look into it. She was just getting like, hey, we can't really do anything. He's in a better
yeah.
place,
Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah.
Well, with the understanding that things were definitely going wrong behind the scenes, regardless. So,
Well, yeah, and she got a lot of like, well, Uganda has to do it too, right?
yeah, that
We
too.
can't really, they have to accept him back as
The
well,
diffusion of responsibility.
right? Yeah. Uh, which might be true, which is probably true, but also is like, well, okay, then you're the State Department. You're responsible for negotiating or dealing with foreign governments. Maybe you can start to do your job or do parts of your job to be like, talk to them about it, see what they say would need to happen to get it done. Um, but they seem to just be like, well, they have to help us, and as an excuse to just not do anything. So they didn't get into like exactly how it was allowed to happen, but it seemed like it was allowed to happen, and Charles was allowed to go back and stay there.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, because I
so
guess Jennifer contacted a private detective who was able to find his biological mother. And through that liaison, she was able to arrange him going back to his native town or village. So
yeah,
that's how that process got set up right before he was sent back.
yeah. I mean, it seems like he's just sort of in the wind now. So we'll see what happens, but or maybe we won't ever know what happens. To be honest, like he's
Yeah.
in Uganda now. Um, and he's an adult like this point. Like he's his own person.
Yeah.
Uh, like meaning that he can make decisions and no one can really coerce him. Right? He's not a child anymore.
Yeah. He's 18 at this point.
So part of me is like, oh my, yeah, yeah. I think it was uh courageous in a sense that Jennifer did this for him or did a lot of this stuff, and like that, and Charles seemed to be very adamant and consistent throughout the years that he wanted to go back. He wanted to go back. The birth mother seemed genuine, like that, like she wanted to help him or she wanted him to be part of the family.
Hmm.
And it was a hard decision for everyone, I think, right? But I think it was the right thing to do in that it was rectifying a wrong. I think it would have been very easy just to be like, you know what? Well, he's in a better, just like what a lot of the agencies were saying and other people were like, yeah, he's in a better place, right? He's in America. He's not in Uganda, right? Why wouldn't you rather be in America? Um, but at the same time, like it had been a long time, right? Like it was like more than, more than like half of his life,
Yeah.
right?
About 10 years at that point, give
Yeah.
or take. Yeah.
So it's like, but at the end of the day, I think it was right, but it is a tough call, because
I guess given how difficult it was, I'm surprised that Jennifer stuck with it.
I am too. But I think also what when we didn't talk about this is that he was making it really tough on them, like
True.
at home. Like he was not like they had to install locks in their rooms. They didn't lock him in anywhere, but they locked him out
Yeah.
of their bedrooms. So like every like the two biological children of Jennifer and Richard, they didn't name them, which I appreciate that they didn't name minors that didn't need to be named.
Good.
Um, but yeah, I mean they had locks inside so that they could lock the door when they were in there so that he couldn't get in because he would steal things. I think. Um,
I think it also said some like sexual stuff too that he was doing. And I think
maybe I don't know. Yeah.
it's one of those things where like I look at that and some of the
I'm
other
not saying
stories.
I'm not blaming. Well, I mean, he did what he did, so he's to blame for it.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
I'm not
I
like,
we are going to the exact same
yeah,
place, which is yes, he did that shit. Yes, it's wrong. But I imagine that if a child, if he wasn't learning it where he was adopted from, it must have come from somewhere. So he must have been
Yeah.
through some sort of unexplainable, just like incomprehensible trauma of such great magnitude that he was doing these things based on our social rules and based on the order and peace that we're used to be able to do that. Like it speaks to children being exposed to very bad forces as they're going through this process of changing custody or being in the foster system and transitioning into being in a foster family or an adoptive family.
Yeah.
It's and it seems to be incredibly common.
Yeah, and he didn't seem to grow out of it, right? Some people,
Yeah.
most people will grow out of it, or a lot of people do, or because I don't also like, in acknowledging that this happens or that people act, that a lot of adoptees might act in this way. I don't want to sort of reinforce the stereotype that like all adoptees are sort of criminals in waiting or broken in some, criminally broken, because we're not.
Hmm.
Um, but in this particular case, like I think not only did Jennifer sort of feel like she had participated in a fraud, right, and been made a criminal, and it was just wrong. But I also think like he was making it very tough.
Yep.
So like there was a motivation of like she wants to do right by Charles. She also needs to do right by herself and her other kids. So there was a lot of motivation, right? But again, it would have been potentially easier to sort of just abandon him in the United States
Yeah.
somewhere, right? Like just relinquish him back to the agency or like put him into foster care in the United States, right? She could have done that.
Yep. And that's what speaks to the 66,000 children that were in foster care, were adopted, and then eventually returned back into the foster care system. That, these problems do arise. They can be very unmanageable, but it seems like Jennifer stuck through. Whereas a lot of families are like, well, this child's a little bit too fucked up for us. We're dealing with too much. So you take care of him. We don't want him anymore.
Right. And we've talked about that as well. Is like that is also sort of an insane, crazy, um, like, uh, I don't know. It's sort of just insane and crazy that that is even allowed to happen,
Yeah.
because and no one really wants to talk about it, because I think there's a sense that like that's just that is very that is not a good thing that we allow to happen, even if it's understandable from the perspective of like, man, that must be tough.
Yep.
Would I wanna, like, try to muddle through it? Probably not. But at the
Yep.
same time, no one's gonna give grace to, like, or there's gonna be a lot less grace given to a parent whose biological kid is a handful. And
Exactly.
then they're just like, "You know what? I don't wanna deal with this. I relinquish all my parental rights and put them into foster care." Like, that would not be seen as, like, a responsible thing to do, right?
Yeah.
Or, like, understandable or forgivable, and, like, "Oh, I understand it must be tough, and, you made that decision. We know it was hard, but no judgment," right? Like, people would not be happy with that.
Absolutely not.
But when it happens to a kid who is adopted from foster care or not even from foster care, um, people I think are much more willing to be like, "Oh, it was tough." So yeah, they just, gave the kid back. Um, so it's like I don't think that it should be as easy as they seem to, not that it's easy like emotionally for people to do it, but it seems
Yeah.
like it's easy enough to do from a procedural perspective.
Yeah, from a procedural perspective, absolutely. And I guess the fact that it happens at all, and more importantly, the reasons why, the sort of, if I were to remove myself from the experience of being adopted
Right.
and put myself in those parents' shoes, and you've got like a 13-year-old kid that's sexually assaulting your other kids,
Right, because there was
or,
one story about that with
yep,
with international adoptee. That's right.
yep. So, I mean, in cases like that, I get that that's an urgent situation. I'm not saying that, like, because you're dealing with that situation, it's your kid, that you need to
Do
just
nothing. Of
deal
course you do
with it within
something,
your own
yeah.
home and not
You
get
do
any
something,
help.
yeah, of course.
Absolutely. But it speaks to something about this process, something about this system, in terms of things that are allowed to happen upstream where these children are exposed to these sorts of traumas. And once again, it speaks to a seemingly unrelated issue of, hey, maybe we should somehow get these parents biologically of these children more money and more resources so that way they don't have to go through the disruption and possible manipulation of bad actors that take advantage of people in these compromised situations, uh, to the point where now there's a very traumatized child that has the potential to traumatize other people and
Right.
other children.
Right.
And they also have the possibility of being returned back into the system that put them with that family in the first place because they were just fucked up from the things they were exposed to in the system. So it's a
That's right.
very cyclical sort of thing as it relates to the reasons why someone would want to dissolve an adoption.
Right. Because take adoption out of the equation, right? Be like there are plenty of people who have kids that who I mean, I don't know how many, but it's more than you would probably like to think, of children who have sexually abused other children. Like that one story I was talking about where a family they had adopted 3 kids from China, I think, or at
Yep.
least 2. I think it was 3.
Yep.
And the oldest one abused the other 2.
Yep.
And let's say that they weren't adopted children; they were just the biological children that happened. Um, get the kid help, of course. Get all the kids help.
Yep.
Um, send the kid to a facility, or separate him from the family in physically, so he can get help, or with help, right? And also so he's removed and he can't um, continue to abuse his siblings, but he would still be the kid of the parents, right? The parents would still have parental rights, like legally, like
At the
there
end
would
of the day.
it would be like the last thing that might happen, but it's very rare, I would assume, that the parents would then give up. It would be they would be allowed to discharge their parental rights, like by the legal system. The legal system will allow them to do that.
Yeah, so
Um,
that's exactly something that I was thinking about, but I don't really know with certainty because there's not really any discussions of
I,
parents
yeah, I don't
uh,
think it's very easy to
dissolving
give up.
that with their biological children. But just
I
in
don't think it
terms
would be
of
easy. I mean,
anecdotally and just my read on the situation based on reading pieces like this, it sounds like it's much easier to dissolve an adoption than to
yeah,
dissolve a parental child relationship with your biological children, even if they were doing equally egregious things.
right. Like you have murderers in prison, and it's not like every one of their parents and family members have just like legally dissolved, you know, that
Yeah.
relationship. Like their parents haven't like legally dissolved that relationship, right? Like they're still legally related to one another. Um, so yeah, it just seems much easier to do that when the child's identities and legal relationships have already been disrupted once before, right? It just
Yep.
the system allows it to happen over and over and over. And these are like these examples of Charles to a lesser extent, and to Chinese adoptee, who I don't think they name in that
Mhm.
article. These are like the very extreme examples of behavior from adoptees that would motivate adoptive parents to sever that, or to dissolve that adoption.
Yep.
But as I think you mentioned, in the data, emotional distress or emotional disturbance is a much, is very is a big reason, right? Where a lot of these the adoptions get broken.
Yep.
And emotional disturbance doesn't mean that they actually committed like abuse. It was just
Yeah.
that they
Some
might be
sort of
very,
crime.
very difficult,
Yep.
right? They're just not controllable in a sense that maybe um, they steal, maybe, or they're violent in some sense, or they just don't they're disobedient, maybe, um, or yeah, whatever that emotional distress or disruption might be.
And so with something like this, this is something that we haven't discussed before, but I think it's just sort of a relevant comparison, is that I think in a case by case basis, there's always something productive that you can do. And in the case of, say, like someone who's committed an egregious murder, I think there is a case to be made that, yeah, you probably deserve the death penalty. But me individually, in terms of my beliefs, like it's taken a while for me to be able to separate uh, something that I think is appropriate in one situation and being able to apply it consistently at scale. And in this case,
Right.
like that's why I'm against the death penalty. Not because I don't think people deserve. There are plenty of people that deserve that shit, but there's just a history of discrimination, a history of bias, and so many mistakes that are made at
Yeah.
scale that I don't think it's worth having as a practice, as an institution. And I think in this case, it's very similar. Like, how can we really set a standard for how bad a child has to be in order for the familial relationship to be dissolved in adoption? I think that on a case by case basis, you could say, yeah, that child is really messed up and should be separated completely from this family, and you should pretend that you never met each other or encountered each other. I'm sure there are cases like that, but I don't think you can really have that as sort of an available solution for everyone in a similar situation like that. And it seems like that
Hmm.
is way
Yeah.
too often the case if tens of thousands, 66,000 children after being adopted are put back into the system domestically. I just think that's craziness.
Yeah. No, I agree. I agree. Um,
Yeah, it's complicated, complex stuff, and it's taboo to really think about in any sort of circumstance beyond thinking about adoption as just this storybook happy ending. And pieces like this and situations like we've been discussing are examples of how this conversation can become very difficult very quickly.
right. And it's like these corruptions and breakdowns in international adoption specifically happen over and over and over in country after country. And um, so Smolin, a law professor and director of the Center for Children Law and Ethics at Samford University, not
Samford,
Stanford,
SAM.
Samford, said he noticed a pattern in some developing countries. International adoption begins, money funnels in, the number of adoptions skyrockets, bad practices lead to scandals, and scandals lead to a moratorium or shutdown. Sometimes adoptions start up again, sometimes they don't. Smolin said that process has played out again and again in Guatemala, in Ethiopia, in the Democratic Republic of Congo, and in Uganda, where the Girths adopted Charles. So this happens over and over and over and over and over. It's not like, oh, it happened in like a couple of countries and then we sort of figured out the formula. It just continues to happen.
Yep.
Um, because, and it's a pretty simple thing that, it's international adoption starts. There's a lot of money. And when there's a lot of money, then it's going to lead people to do bad things to get to that money.
Yep.
It's one thing when it's like, some commodity or some thing you can buy and people maybe are bribing people or skirting, and it's bad enough like when they're skirting labor practices and people are being exploited, right? But when the literal product and the thing that's being exchanged for the money are children, humans, that's a bigger problem, or it's
Much
a very
bigger.
very big problem. And the fact that we don't seem to have the will to enforce these UN agreements or to really, um, you know, have very strict standards and tightly regulated um, processes, uh, it seems like we just don't want to, because it just keeps happening.
So one completely unrelated thing. This is going to be like last episode too. I've been drinking some of our official sponsors' beverage,
Oh, that's
water.
right. That's right.
It's
What is that? True,
yeah,
true,
truly, truly. Uh,
truly.
yeah, so I need to pee again. I'm
Go
sorry to
for it.
every single person that expected me to handle myself with poise. I can't do that. I really got to go.
No, no. This is why
So
they watch. This
you,
is why
yeah,
they watch.
distract them for 50 seconds. I'll be back so fast you won't even realize I was gone. One
All
moment.
right. All right. Well, I'm looking forward to um the deal that Kyle's gonna tell us about later because I assume it's got to have something to do with technology. Um, because we're both, in the video games and technology. Um, but maybe it's not. Maybe it's about something else. And also, we promised that we're going to have an AMA type stream at some point. Um, and we will answer your questions about ourselves or about anything that you want to ask us about. Uh, and I'm sorry that this is such a depressing or maybe heavy topic. Um, but I just needed to talk about that particular story about Charles Girth and the fact that he actually was returned to and is living presumably in Uganda. As I mentioned, there was that uh, a very similar situation or a similar situation when I was growing up with a Korean adoptee. Um, I I think about it every once in a while. I talk about it on a podcast or with somebody every once in a while, and I never remember his name. I feel really bad about that, but I will try to figure that out. I'll probably have to ask my mom if she remembers some of the details. But it was just really kind of it was there weren't that many adoptees that I knew growing up anyway, um, or and the fact that he entered my high school, of all the schools that he could have come to, was I don't know, what are the odds of that? Um, and he was I I remember he got into trouble because he would get into fights, but we were cool. Like we never fought. But
That's good. I'm glad you guys didn't fight.
yeah, we were cool. I mean, I didn't mess with him. He knew I was adopted. Like it was fine. Um, but that truly, I had a beer. I had a Lagunitas. I never know how to pronounce it. Is it Lagunitas? Lagunitas? What is it? Lagunitas? Someone help me. Someone
Yeah,
help me with that.
probably Lagunitas, but
Yeah.
I mean, don't quote me on that. Take it with a grain of salt.
All right. So I'm ready for your deal that you wanted to tell me about or tell everyone about, but
Okay.
I want to hear.
So, GameStop.
Okay. Yeah.
Really great deal going on right now. There are two. I took advantage of both of them. And so there is four for, let me get this right. There are 4 for 40 for pre-owned
Okay.
games, $20 and under. So
Interesting.
4 games as much as $80 you can get for $40. And then there is a 4 for 20 for pre-owned games that are $10 or less. So I
Yeah.
got 8 games for $60, and it would have been over 115 if I'd gotten that without the sale.
Wow.
And it's no special code or anything. If you add items of that price range that are pre-owned,
It'll
then
just
it's automatically applied.
automatically on their website.
Yep, on their website. And
Physical discs only.
physical discs only. Because I guess you can't really have like a pre-owned digital game.
That's
But
true. You use the digital key, it's done, right? Oh man, they have some good games. So they have
so
Tales of Arise. So I'm looking at PS5 games.
yeah,
So they have Tales of Arise, the Far Cry 6, which is on sale, so that makes it
it would make it
below
$5 at
20.
this point. It's under
Well,
10.
it's $24.99, and then they have it on sale for $18.99.
Oh, okay. They must have raised the price because I just got it. I got it
Oh
new
yeah,
for $7.99, and it was $5.99 used at that time. So they
no
must
way.
have
Far
jacked
Cry
up the price.
6
Yeah, Far Cry 6. No joke.
for not for the PS5.
For Xbox Series X.
Shit. Then Deathloop, you can get Deathloop.
Yep.
Watch Dogs Legion. I mean, these are like new games, right?
So,
Watch Dogs Legion is $8.99 used.
yep.
Scarlet Nexus. Let's see. What's one that people would want? I guess Outriders. People like Outriders. That's right. The remake or the remaster of Dungeons and Dragons Dark Alliance. I'm not going to mention any of the sports games because no one wants the sports games. The used sports games.
I looked through over 1,000 games to come up with the 8 that I eventually got. Like I wanted to make sure I got games that I wanted and
Of
games
course,
that
yeah.
were like the highest possible price for the sale. So
yeah, absolutely, yeah. Let's see. Yeah, there are a lot you can go through, but I mean those 4, that I mentioned, like Plague Tale, Innocence, get that.
yep. That's only like a year and a half old or so. So there's a lot of new stuff there that you can get for $5 or $10, depending on how much it is right now at pre-owned price.
There's not as many. There are not as many PS5s. I didn't have to go through that many, but yeah, I mean, just getting Tales of Arise, Far Cry 6, Deathloop, and then maybe like the Guardians of the Galaxy or Watch Dogs Legions.
Yep.
Watch Dogs Legions is actually lower than 10, so you can get what 4 for 20.
4 for 20. Yep.
That's crazy. Yeah, so I mean, get Tales of Arise, Guardians of the Galaxy, Far Cry 6, and Deathloop for $20.
So, can I tell you the
$40. Sorry,
8? Can I tell you the 8 that I got? See what
yeah,
you
go
think.
for it.
So, the 4 for 40 that I got, so $10 each, is I got Hitman 3.
Hitman 3, okay, good game.
I got Guardians of the Galaxy.
Okay, I heard that was good. I heard
I heard it
Guardians
was
of the
good
Galaxy
too.
was good.
I don't usually go for like the superhero licensed game shit, aside
No,
from
it
like
got
the
really
Spider-Man
good reviews,
Insomniac
yeah.
game, but I heard that was actually like an 8 to 8.5 out of 10, so that's why I grabbed it.
It got really good reviews.
And all the games I got were for Xbox Series X, by the way. I mean, any of the exclusive PS5 games that were on there, I already have.
Okay.
And I was like, this generation, I actually prefer getting the multi-platforms on Xbox Series X because of the quick resume and the other thing that allows for automatic download of it on your other Xbox systems that aren't Series X, like on your Xbox One.
Okay, yeah. No,
I forgot what that's called. I don't know, but
yeah,
basically
but PS5
that's.
has quick resume too,
But
in a way. Anyway, yeah. So you got all right. So you
yes.
got
So Hitman 3, Guardians of the Galaxy, so Forza Motorsports 6.
6.
That's Xbox One, but it's really hard to find for a reasonable price. So it was $17.99 regular price, got it for 10. And then here's the one that I thought was a really good deal, even though like technically I probably shouldn't have gotten it because it shouldn't have been any cost in the first place. But you know how they just re-released Grand Theft Auto 5 on the current generation consoles?
Yes.
I
They're
got
always
that.
doing that.
I got that as part of this deal because I didn't want to pay $60 for it, so I got it for 10 with this deal. I got Grand Theft Auto 5 for Xbox Series X, and that makes for like my 6th or 7th copy of Grand Theft Auto 5. So, more power to them. And then the ones that I got for 4 for 20 were not as impressive, but things that I still wanted. So Forza Motorsport 5, so I got 5 and 6. Forza Motorsport 5 was much cheaper, so I got that for $5. Also got Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order.
Oh, that's good. That's good. Fallen Order is good. Yep. It's like Dark Souls Jedi. edition.
But I heard the difficulty's more reasonable too, which is why I
Yeah,
wanted to give
it's
it a
not. I
try.
only call it Dark Soulsy because when you reset or save, all the
Yeah.
enemies respawn, which is
Oh,
like a
okay.
Dark Soulsy thing,
Yeah.
which I don't think really fits into the Star Wars thing. But it's not as hard. The gameplay is not as hard, of course.
Yeah.
But it's a good like original story. It looks great. I mean, I think the Force stuff is pretty cool. And yeah, it's a good game. The sequel's coming out soon or next year.
Yeah. And there's a free next gen upgrade with it too. So I got that for
Nice.
$5. And other two, I already have multiple copies of Resident Evil 7, but I
Oh
didn't have
God.
the Xbox One version, which also has a next generation patch. Got that for $5. And last game I got was Rage 2. I liked Rage
Oh
1.
yeah.
Rage 2 apparently is not like super great, but I'll get it for $5.
Yeah, I heard that Rage is one of those games that like it isn't is that Bethesda?
Yeah, it's Bethesda.
Is it's what kind, it's like a shooter, right? But
Yeah, so it's like an open world shooter.
hmm. That's
And I guess
okay.
like it was supposed to have really frenetic like juggling sort of combat to it. So if you've ever played shit. I can't remember the name of games anymore. But Bulletstorm. Like apparently the combat system in Rage 2 is like Bulletstorm where you can do combos and sort of crazy things with the guys you're shooting. So wanted to give that a
That's
try.
cool. That's cool. All right, man. I might have to take advantage of this. I don't know how long this is going to last for.
Yeah, I don't know either, but I spent a good 2 hours looking. So
Man, physical discs.
yeah.
Man, I have like all these PS3 games that like I still have my PS3, but it's not hooked up. Um,
Hey, I still have
but I
mine
don't think
too, and
it.
it's hooked up, so I understand that.
But I don't think it. I don't think the thing is like I don't think the PS5 has like I don't think I can stick my PS3 games in my PS5 and have it work. I'll have to
Right.
test it out.
Doesn't
Um,
work.
I don't think it works,
Yeah.
which is like
I mean, PS3
always
games are
pisses me
trapped
off.
on PlayStation 3 only,
Yeah.
except for the ones where if you've got PlayStation Plus, you can stream some, but streaming still sucks.
No, it does
So,
suck.
yeah.
Like I tried to stream because you can mirror or stream from your PS5 to like your computer.
Yeah.
If you have PS1 or one of their services. PlayStation and Sony and PlayStation aren't the best with like making their services like easy to understand.
Yep.
Microsoft and Xbox have been much better with that because they just have one, right? They have Game Pass, and that allows you to do all the stuff that like Sony you need two different things for. And I think
Yep.
they tried to like make it one recently, but like it's still worse than Game Pass
Yep.
because they have a lot more tiers and like they segregate the different functionalities, the different tiers, and just hard to understand. But anyway, I tried to do that and it was just bad. Like, and I have really good internet, but it's like kind of you're going through the internet to just try to stream from like one thing to another. I'm like,
Yeah,
why am
one
I
thing to
doing that?
another.
I'll just go into the living room and like sit on my couch, like use my TV.
No,
Why am
exactly.
I
You
trying to
didn't
do
buy
it on my
Stadia.
monitor and stream it from the
Exactly.
PlayStation that's sitting in the other room? It just
You
maybe if I
just get your
weren't,
ass up.
yeah, maybe if I weren't like in my apartment or in my house or whatever, but and I was like across the country, I'd try it and see how it worked, but I wouldn't hold my breath. I don't think it would look great.
Tech's not there yet.
Um,
Maybe in 10 years, but for now, streaming games over a network does not work well.
well, in 10 years, we'll all be driving electric cars anyway. So
No,
why not?
exactly.
So, um,
But that was my deal of the week that I felt
awesome,
like was worthwhile to wait until the end to talk about.
sweet.
So I saved a total of $48.92 on that order.
And you got 8 games, right?
8 games. 8 games for $64.97. $4.97 as tax. So
Wow.
I was only going to do the 4 for 40, but free shipping didn't kick in until $59, and shipping was $8.
Oh God, yeah. I mean,
So I was
might
like,
as well
well,
get
shit,
four
I
more
might as
games for
well.
another $20. And
Exactly.
yeah,
Exactly. Spend the extra 12 to get 4 more games.
yeah. Why not? Um, that's a maybe. GameStop. Like, oh, you never know why they do this stuff. Maybe they just have so much inventory. They're like, whatever. Let's just get some money for it.
I think so. I
Um,
think they're desperate. But hey, that's good
all
for me.
that's right. All the meme stock money is gone now, I guess.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, man, like a lot of good games, a lot of games coming out. Um, what'd you do for New Year's just before we close?
What did I do? Actually, I didn't do anything that day. Shit.
I didn't
Uh,
either.
I did absolutely nothing. I did watch for the day to change over and the year to change over, but I
Yeah,
didn't
so
celebrate or
yeah.
anything. I was playing video games. Uh, I just finished Vampire Survivors,
How do you
and
finish Vampire Survivors?
I got all the
Survivor.
achievements.
Oh,
So
you 100%ed it. Okay.
yeah, so I took about 15 days, and so I never finished Red Dead Redemption 2, so I picked that up again. So I was playing that on New Year's Eve.
It's good. That's a good game. And you know a game's good when the video game horses poop.
No, exactly, and
You know it's a
their
good game when
balls
that
react
happens.
to the weather. So
Yeah. It's a good game when that happens.
developers crunch for that.
Appreciate it, all right? It's
Exactly.
if they're gonna give up their health for it, appreciate it. Um, yeah, no, I didn't do anything for New Year's Eve either. But on New Year's Day, I went to my sister-in-law's, and uh, and the family was there.
Okay.
So my in-laws were there. So we spent, like
Nice.
an afternoon lunch. We had, always too much food at a Korean or Asian get together, right? Always way
Absolutely.
too much food. Um, have you heard of and so my brother-in-law or the family, they bought this called a solo stove. Have you heard of those?
No, not a
Oh,
solo
a
stove.
solo stove. Here, I think I will share this.
Oh shit. Okay.
So it's actually like it looks small in the picture, but
Yeah.
this is the size of it. So
Oh, okay. That's like the size of an industrial wastebasket cut in half.
yeah, but it's a really clever design because you see the holes in the bottom.
Yeah.
The air gets in, and then it sort of. But he has the attachment where uh, he has the heat deflector attachment. Uh, yeah, so he has the heat deflector attachment.
Yeah.
So it instead of so you can sit around it and you get warmer like horizontally instead of the heat going up.
Okay. Yeah.
We also roasted chestnuts on the heat deflector.
That's very Korean. Yeah.
So you see the top has these vents.
Yeah. That's where you put the
So
nuts
the
to roast them.
chestnuts went here.
Nice.
Uh, and then the kids started roasting marshmallows like in between, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, and we didn't even like this stove is like stacked really high with wood. We did not stack it that high. Um,
That looks really nice though.
it's I mean, look at this. The guys put there's like a grill attachment.
That's crazy.
Um, and it's supposedly really easy to like clean out because it has like the removable ash pan.
Okay.
He said like it gets most of it, but then you still have to like wipe it down. But it's super safe, right? Because it just keeps the flame in here, and like you don't need to have an actual fire pit or
Yeah,
like an
fire
open
pit or like a brick
fire.
sort of thing going on with
Yeah.
it.
So yeah, he's been using it a lot.
I think I might get one of those for summer.
Yeah, I mean it's not cheap, but I guess Solo Stove is having a sale right now.
Okay.
So bonus bonus deal,
Oh yeah,
right?
bonus deal.
It's not cheap. It's not cheap. I mean, 225
I mean, it's
bucks.
not cheap,
But it's
but
not
like
super expensive.
I've got the disposable income for that if I
Yeah.
want it that bad.
If
So
you know, yeah, it's not super expensive. It's portable, so you can take it anywhere. It's smokeless. It is much more smokeless. So
okay.
much less smokeless. It's a lot less smoke is generated of the Thai charcoal burners. Let's look that up. Thai char charcoal stove. Yeah. I would say yeah. It's like that, right? Kind of like that. That's a Japanese hibachi. Sorry, so it's. Uh, why does it keep going to this?
I don't
Oh, here
know.
we go. This one. Yeah, kind of. Yeah. So this is like an old school one.
Nice.
We're getting your feedback again. Maybe that's a sign that we should try to wrap this
Damn,
up.
I didn't change a single thing.
I know it's
So,
so weird, man. No, now it's gone. I don't know what's
huh,
going on.
man.
But yeah, I mean, you're right. You're right. This is just like that, but it's like a fancier one. It's a fancy American one. Um, yeah, I mean, they stole the technology. They stole the technique. But yeah, so we use that. I mean, it's a really cool little thing. I mean, I'm sure these are a lot cheaper, the Thai ones. And then I guess like as a gift or as part of like when he bought it, they give you a little tiny one that
Huh.
you're supposed to be able to like use on a tabletop. He's like, I don't know if that's gonna do anything. So he doesn't trust it. He's like, I don't know about that one. But yeah, it was fun, and then that was it. I mean, and then I had that Monday off because New Year's was on a Sunday. So yeah.
Yeah, I guess we're getting older now, so we don't need to party as hard.
Oh yeah. But did you ever go to like Times Square or something like that?
Hell no.
Yeah, me either.
I mean, I like parties, but I don't like big crowds on the street like that. So anything that involves like pain in the ass walking and parking or like huge crowds like that, I can't do it. Makes me mad.
Yeah. Oh. All right.
Yeah, I
Was there
guess is that
anything
all we
else?
got?
I think that's all we got, unless we're just gonna continue. So of the 8 games that you got, which one
Yeah,
are you? So well, you said you're starting to play Red Dead again, but of the new
yeah.
ones, which one are you looking forward to get? Because have you received them yet in the mail?
No, I'm getting them in the next 1 to 2 days. I'd say the one that I'm most excited to try is it's either going to be Guardians of the Galaxy, just because I've heard good things about it, and it seems like it's a well designed, interesting game. Uh, but also Hitman 3. I don't know. I like stealth games where you have a lot of flexibility to do weird stuff, and I'm just
Hitman
excited
3
to
is
see
supposed to
what
be really
that's.
good. I mean, it's not really my thing, but I heard it's like if you like that, if you like the game, like that genre of game,
I do.
it's really, really good.
So
That's what I've heard.
those are the two I'm excited to check out. Everything else, it's nice. I'll probably play them for a few hours, then they'll probably be back on the shelf if I'm honest. But I'm just glad to have them. It makes me feel safe and secure.
I hear you. I hear you. What games are you looking forward to for 2023? Did we talk
Shit,
about this already?
we haven't yet. Um, I to
Chat,
be
if
honest,
you have any games, post them too. But
yeah, because I guess I really don't. I mean, like, uh, the only thing that I can think of being excited about, and I don't even know when it's coming out, is Death Stranding 2. Other than that,
oh yeah,
like, there's stuff that I know is coming out in 2023, but I guess I had no plans on like getting it immediately. Like Breath of the Wild too. I'm sure I'll play that at some point, but I'm not like really excited to get it or anything. So I don't know. I guess I've always been the type to be willing to wait to get it on sale. It's very rare that I'll get a new game.
Hmm. Yeah, no, that's fair enough.
What about you?
I think the Spider-Man 2 from
Yeah, I think that's
Insomniac.
going to be really good.
That I'm looking forward to. Um, because it's also going to have both Miles Morales and Peter Parker in it. I wonder how they're going to pull that off, like how they're going to switch them back and forth. Because the Spider-Man in 2018 worked really well. I thought Miles Morales was actually a good game. I know some people are just pissed at Miles Morales existing, but aside from that, I thought the game was good. The story was good, or fine. Um, it played just as well. I think it was a solid game. Um, I just wonder what they're going to do with it. Like, is it just going to be more of the Spider-Man? If it is, that's fine by me. I mean, it was great. So like, I know people like it would be a similar deal with like God of War Ragnarok, right? Like people were like some people were pissed that it seemed like it was just God of War 2018, God of War
Expanded
like
sort of thing.
1.5 or 1.75. Um, I'm like, cool, that game ruled. Like, all right, so you're gonna make it a little bit better. You're gonna add a couple of things, but in general, it's just basically like another game in that, like another story in that universe with that like type of game. Sign me up, and I was perfectly happy with that. Um, so I wonder what they're gonna do to make it different, right? Because I mean, they basically had everything that you'd ever want in like the original one, like the
Yeah.
first, like 2018 one, right? Yeah, they had amazing web swinging. Um, they had really good combat. They had a lot of like the web, gadgets and everything like that were powers that he could use. Tons of costumes.
Yeah, lots of
Um,
customization and leveling options.
Lots and lots of costumes. They had a lot of side content missions and things. Not just like you could play Spider Cop, right, and like beat up like criminals, but you could all sorts of like mini games and things that you could complete if you wanted to. Um, I just I don't know what else they could do. I mean, I think there's one screenshot where he has like in one of the suits like that he got more recently has like the spider arms that come out, like the mechanical spider arms. That was in like one of the movies.
Okay.
Like you could have some, maybe he'll have some sort of powers of that. But I thought I don't know. I don't know what they're gonna do. Right? I mean, they'll have another villain. I think Venom's gonna be the villain. Um, so they had tons of the villains in the games already, other than Venom. So they had like Vulture, they had Rhino, they have Fisk, they have um, Scorpion. They had they had Stunner, right, the guy who shoots the electricity. They had Electro. They had all these villains already. So like, I just wonder what they're gonna do. Um,
Yeah, it seems like they had a lot of them already as boss characters in
yeah,
the first two. So I'm interested to see what they do in this sequel.
I'm interested to see what they do in the sequel. Um, so yeah, that's probably that one. Yeah, I'm looking forward to Diablo 4, even with all of the shit with Activision and Blizzard.
Yeah.
But I think as a game, it looks pretty good. I don't know if I'll buy it, but I'm interested to just watch people play it. I guess part of me part of me does want to buy it because even though that I don't want to support Bobby Kotick and those assholes, it- I mean a lot of good people also worked on it, right? Um,
Yeah, I know
so
what you mean. I've kind of
I'm
come to the
conflicted.
conclusion of like, there's no ethical consumption under capitalism anyway.
Yeah, that's a good
Whatever.
point too.
I'll still
Uh,
get the Chick-fil-A sandwich and enjoy it. You know,
well, I
it
don't
is
buy
what it is.
Chick-fil-A just because I think their sandwich is overrated, but I have not had good Chick-fil-A, so maybe it's like, and I don't understand the whole In and Out thing either. I know In and Out's good for what it is. I understand that, but I'm like, people act like it's like better than it is, but it's just maybe
I mean,
because
I
I
think both
haven't
are
had
pretty good.
enough
We
of
might
it.
need to save this as a debate for later.
Yeah, we'll debate it because I'll be the hater on it, and then
Yeah, I'll be the defender.
not yeah. So thanks everyone We'll try to actually post on Twitter and get those AMA questions, and maybe we'll do that next time. I know we've talked about that. I will not only will I have this link here in the comment that people can look up, but I will try to update the episode description with this link to the whole series.
And I'll share it out too. So I think it's
Yeah.
worth reading anyway.
And if people take advantage of that GameStop deal that Kyle mentioned, tag us on Twitter or whatever on what you got.
Yeah, tell us what you got.
We'll be interested to see. So thank you so much, and we'll see you next week.
See you next time.
Bye.